Hey, Cypher here. I've been getting a lot of requests to do like a bookshelf tour or something along those lines, but I've actually been kind of apprehensive to do it. You see, the weird thing is, this is a working bookshelf. I don't really have any rhyme or reason to the way I organize everything. It's just kind of whatever goes. There's some places that are clear, there's some places that aren't, but you know, it's constantly changing, because if you couldn't tell, I read a lot. And it's also kind of unrepresentative of what I read, since a good chunk of what I read is on something like this, you know, a tablet. I mean, seriously, this doesn't represent the amount of books I read, it's just kind of what I have from what has accumulated over time. But since it's the backdrop of everything I do, I guess I'll show you guys. I'm also making this to make a few announcements about Patreon and a Spreadshirt thing that I'm putting together. More on that stuff at the end of the episode. So if you've been watching this show for long enough, you will have noticed that these shelves have steadily changed over time and grown and all that kind of stuff, and they will continue. Because, well, I'm still in school and I will always be reading. That's kind of what you do as a historian, right? So without further ado, I'm going to get behind the camera to point out what's what. So first things first, this is the angle you guys normally see me at. But if we zoom out a little bit, you'll see this is pretty much just my bedroom. Not really anything special here. There's the computer I do all the editing on and all that kind of stuff. Just kind of, I set up the camera in a corner and started recording one day. That's pretty much how I've always done this channel. There's the mic setup. Zoom in, you can see it's a Shure SM58 connected to this little input-output device. Alright, let's begin this tour with my most used shelf right here. This is essentially just a shelf for putting random books in and what I need easy access to. So it's just kind of what I've been reading recently. You'll notice it's a lot of Western history because that's kind of my specialty subject. Violence in the West. So you have your essentials, you know, like Legacy of Conquest. That one's basically an answer to that one, which is Frederick Jackson Turner. Did an entire episode on that guy. Got Bolton, Pomeranz somewhere, all of the major figures. So let's just go down one shelf, and you'll see there's a bunch of encyclopedias here, some local histories. For instance, there's Las Vegas, San Luis Obispo. I've done a lot with those. But then typical encyclopedia stuff, you know, a lot of Encyclopedia of the West, Encyclopedia of the West. You'll see a lot of philosophy stuff later on because I was a philosophy minor, so I deal a lot with philosophy. Also, there's just some random stuff here at the top. I just kind of shove things where I can, you know? But over here is my religious section. This one is kind of purposefully organized. You'll notice that there's the Holy Bible, that's the Catholic version, the Quran, some Buddhist scriptures, Book of Mormon, the Bhagavad Gita, all that kind of stuff. Some New Testaments that I got while I was in the army, as well as that. But then I also bracket it with Mein Kampf. Yeah, that's Hitler right there. But of course I have to keep all of that insulated, so I put Nietzsche on the side, because Nietzsche is awesome. And on top of all of that, this little book is kind of interesting because it's actually Mao's Little Red Book. Seriously, it's from the 1960s, so it's actually pretty important piece of history right here. In English, 1960s, Mao's Little Red Book. But even more importantly, on top of all of that, is the aptly named... I'm not one for subtlety, you know? Okay, zooming back out, we will go to the next level, which is this shelf. You'll see there is, well, always alcohol all over the place because I'm a graduate student. But you'll also notice that this is kind of just random hodgepodge of stuff. I can't really tell you what's the organizational style here because, well, there's not really any organization to it. It's just kind of placed together. Heck, I can tell you a good chunk of it is set up specifically so that it's tall enough to just support the shelf above it. So you'll have a lot of random stuff here. But for you guys who might pay attention to my sourcing on a lot of stuff, you'll see a lot of references to things like that book right there, which is good for slaves on screen. Then there is this book right here, which is got a lot of based on a true story stuff. And then the even more aptly named based on a true story. Yeah, so lots and lots of history books, just kind of randomly cobbled together. Going down one, I actually have to lay down in order to even get down here. This is, well, first of all, you'll notice even more alcohol, because grad student, but also this is where you'll find all the Durant stuff, some really random books, but like really useful, such as Jeremy Brecher's Strike right there. That was pretty nice. Made an entire episode about that colonizer's bottle. That's James Blount. Over here, behind the water bottles, are some more American Small War stuff. I actually did an entire episode on this one as well, because he's basically the only person to put American Small Wars into a coherent story. And of course, some important history books such as Bede there and Thucydides. And yet again, you'll notice that these books are kind of holding up the shelf above it. Yeah. Moving out, we'll get to the top shelves, but on top of everything, you'll see there is the Oxford English Dictionary, but the compact edition, because that is actually a drawer for a magnifying glass, because those things are such fine text. And then you have a bunch of notes, and my camera gear, that's just for the thing that I'm holding right here. So the next top shelf is my leather bounds. You'll see these are mostly compendiums, just kind of fun books. They're all leather bound, so it's really nice. And you'll also find some of my oldest books up here because they used to do a lot of leather bounds. That thing right there at the end is a 19th century book, and that right there is an 18th century book. So yeah, some of these get pretty old, and these are just kind of cool. If you've ever held a leather-bound book, it's really nice to read from. Zooming out and down, you get another shelf that's pretty much just a hodgepodge of stuff. And you'll find I just don't have very much of an organizational style here. There's a lot of philosophy here, as you can tell. But as you get towards the end, there's even more history. Zooming out, it's going to be a little dark, but hopefully it records well. We have another history section. Getting the idea here? Yeah, there's just a lot of history books. And finally, we'll get down here to the last history book section, which is still just kind of random. It is going to be covered by the mic in a little bit here. Hopefully we can get some good pictures. There we go. And I really like this book on the end, Into the Fire. That's Dakota Mayer. I was actually there, so I'm pretty proud of that book. Zooming out and back down, we have yet another section of just random books, but these are all literary. So you have your Dickens, gotta have a collection of Dickens, and then, you know, Hemingway, a lot of Mark Twain. I have a compendium up there of leather-bound stuff, but you know. Then we get on over to the more philosophical stuff over here, Dostoevsky. Yeah, there's Ayn Rand there, but you gotta have bad stuff too, just like I have Mein Kampf, because you can't just have the good stuff. And zooming out, we have the bottom shelf here, which is kind of just stuff that I can't fit on the shelf. So here is all of my comic books, a lot of random stuff, of course, but other greats, you know, Watchmen, V for Vendetta, you know, the Crisis series, like when Superman was killed in that whole run, mostly comics there. Then we have the books that are just too big to shelve, so this is an Encyclopedia of America's Wars. This is a pretty interesting one because it is Arnold Toynbee's study of history, but it's abridged and with a bunch of cool illustrations. Really useful. Toynbee's kind of the Durant for England. And then just more encyclopedias and whatnot over there. Pretty tightly compact. And finally, the last shelf, the top of the previous bookcase, which is a lot more philosophy stuff. Even some Durant philosophy right up there. You know, you got your Plato and Sun Tzu and Descartes, Schopenhauer, Kant, all that kind of fun stuff. Marx right there next to Locke. Kind of appropriate, I think. And then over here, you'll notice that I have Smedley Butler. I kind of love this guy. But he's also kind of a whack job. This is not a good book to read, and he's kind of a conspiracy theorist. But it's fun, and the title is just so great. It's covering up a bunch of kind of quickie philosophy books that are really, really useful. And that is the bookshelf. Hopefully you guys find this interesting and useful. It changes all the time, so you can't exactly trust this to remain the same, and who knows, I might have to get another bookshelf soon enough. I seem to be running out of space. So, that's the Bookcase Tour. Hopefully you guys found that somewhat interesting. Now on to the announcements. I've been tinkering around with Spreadshirt, a company for putting out printed shirts that have, you know, logos in that. The great thing about these things is that they allow you to make it yourself as well. So these are, the actual symbols are what I make a commission on, and you guys can configure that to however you want. There's some preset stuff, I'm sure I'm already showing it on the screen, such as this hoodie that I'm wearing, which happens to have that on the back. It's nice thin hoodies that you can, you know, put up and whatever. But there's a bunch of different ones out there, and I've been testing them just to make sure that they work well. For instance, these are my favorites. They have the symbol on the front and the title on the back. So, front, back, and I've been putting it through its paces. It's been through the laundry about 5 or 6 times and shows no wear, so these seem pretty good. There's a premium version and a non-premium version that's a little cheaper, though they both are holding up just fine. You can customize it any way you would like to do, and there's a whole bunch of other things you can get. For instance, you can get little badges with the symbol on it. There's the symbol. Now on to the Patreon announcement. I've got some big news. Anyone who is donating $5 or more is getting pre-access to any video I upload. So something I have to do because of workflow reasons, since I only have a limited amount of time to do all the research and writing that it takes to do this stuff, is that I make a whole bunch of them at once, and then spread out the releases. So oftentimes, what you guys see uploaded and released has been uploaded for months sometimes. It can be really that long. So I'm setting it up so that anybody at the $5 tier or more gets access to those videos prior to release, which means that you might have access to those videos months in advance. So it's kind of different from your typical pre-release thing on Patreon. It's literally access to anything. And here's the second part: you get access at any tier to the Discord server, which means that anyone from $1 on up gets access to that, and that's where I will be posting pre-access stuff from now on. So anybody who wants that, they will get a separate channel so that they can see all the pre-release videos. Also on there, there's some stuff like my list of upcoming videos, just kind of a schedule that I keep in a random thing for thoughts and that. I'm going to be putting these all on the Discord server so that anybody at certain tiers will have access to that. I'm also going to be making a Dropbox with a bunch of files of assets and that for the $15 tier, so that anybody at the $15 tier gets access to basically all of my random assets that I've managed to generate over time, such as those statues of like Diogenes holding the lantern and whatnot. Also, there will be access to scripts for the $15 tier, which I have to say, the scripts are never final. I often ad-lib a lot of lines. For instance, this entire video has been completely done on the fly. I am working off of no script whatsoever. And that's most of the diatribes as well. I don't really script those. Hence why they don't count as full episodes. So yeah, if you're a patron, be sure to check those things out. It'll be on the Discord server soon enough. Or it might already be there, since I tend to make these videos pretty far in advance, and that's, I'm trying to figure this whole thing out as best I can. I'm more about reading them books, So thanks for all of your support in whatever way you do, whether it's through Patreon, Spreadshirt, or just watching. Thank you so much. Cheers.